One family, over 125,000 passing yards, 4 Super Bowl rings, and 5 MVPs. They've manipulated the draft, rewritten record books, and conquered the game's greatest legends. Yet, somehow, the most talented Manning of them all never even took a snap in the NFL. But now, a third generation is stepping into the spotlight. So, how did the Mannings take over football's most demanding position and become the game's first royal family? It all started in 1949 with a tough, fearless kid from Drew, Mississippi, Archie Manning. In the late 60s, Archie was a one-man highlight reel at Ole Miss. He threw for over 4,700 yards and ran for nearly 800 more in an era where passing was practically an afterthought. He finished top 5 in Heisman voting twice, once while playing through a broken arm. And by the time the 1971 NFL Draft rolled around, he was seen as one of the most electric college quarterbacks in the country. So, the New Orleans Saints took him with the 2nd overall pick. The problem was, the Saints were a barely functioning franchise. They had no offensive line, no defense, and no stability. In fact, fans literally wore paper bags over their heads with the word "ain'ts," because the Saints ain't winning nothing. They were that bad. And yet, Archie became the face of the team by making magic out of the mayhem. He scrambled for his life, took brutal hits week after week, and yet still found ways to make wild plays. In 1979, he led the NFL in completions. In 1978 and 1979, he made back-to-back Pro Bowls. And in 1980, he was named NFC Offensive Player of the Year on a team that went 1-15 the year before. He finished his career with 23,911 passing yards, 125 total touchdowns, and only 35 wins to 101 losses. With that said, anyone who played with or against him will tell you, Archie was the real deal. A great quarterback stuck on an awful team. And that was a fate he would later make sure didn't happen to his kids. But Archie isn't mainly remembered for what he did on the field, rather what he did off of it. Because he was the father of 3 children who would change NFL history forever: Cooper, Peyton, and Eli. Fast forward to 1991 at Isidore Newman High School, where a young Peyton Manning took over as the starting varsity QB as a sophomore. But his favorite target wasn't some upperclassman wideout or future D1 recruit, it was his older brother, Cooper Manning. At 6'4", with silky smooth routes, soft hands, and a glide to his game that reminded scouts of NFL greats, Cooper was easily the best player on the field. He dominated defensive backs, making separation look easy and reeling in deep balls like he was playing catch in the backyard. His senior season was so impressive, he earned all-state honors and was flooded with offers from schools like Texas, LSU, and their dad Archie's alma mater, Ole Miss.
And the goal of my life, since I was, 4 or 5, was to try to play college football. That was about the coolest thing someone could do, and that was about as far of a dream as it could be.
Scouts projected him as a future star. Coaches called him special. And Archie himself would later admit multiple times that Cooper was the most naturally gifted Manning of them all. And together, Peyton and Cooper were electric. Their brother-to-brother connection turned Friday nights into must-see events. At times, it felt like watching a preview of the NFL. And to this day, only one receiver has topped 1,000 yards at Isidore Newman High School since Cooper Manning, Odell Beckham Jr. When Cooper finally committed to Ole Miss, it felt like a storybook continuation of the Manning legacy. Peyton even considered following him there. That's how deep their connection ran. But just as Cooper was preparing to take that next step, something felt off. He started experiencing numbness, first in his fingers, then spreading down his legs. First, it seemed like nothing, but after several tests, the diagnosis came: spinal stenosis, a rare condition that causes narrowing of the spine. And in Cooper's case, it made football life-threatening. And just like that, his career was over.
Learn how to walk all over again, and went from wheelchair to walker to cane.
It was heartbreaking for Cooper, for the family, and especially for Peyton. So from that moment on, he was different, focused, obsessed. Peyton shattered Isidore Newman High School records, torching defenses for 7,207 passing yards and 92 touchdowns across 3 seasons. His poise in the pocket, his pre-snap reads, his command of the game, it was all years ahead of schedule. So by the time recruiting rolled around, he wasn't just Archie's son or Cooper's little brother anymore. He was Peyton Manning. In total, he had over 60 offers from schools like LSU, Michigan, and the most obvious choice, Ole Miss. However, Peyton shocked everyone. when he chose the University of Tennessee. He wanted a program that would challenge him, one that ran a pro-style offense, one that would make him NFL ready. It was a controversial decision, but it was classic Peyton, calculated, strategic, and locked in on the long game. And in Knoxville, Manning went crazy. He won 39 of his 45 career starts, threw for 11,201 yards and 89 touchdowns, and left with nearly every major passing record in SEC history. He led the Vols to an SEC championship in 1997. He was named a unanimous All-American and earned countless accolades, including being a 4-time academic All-American, the Davy O'Brien winner, and the Maxwell Award recipient. He most likely would have been the number 1 overall pick in the draft following his junior year, but he decided to come back for his senior year.
And I probably would have been the first pick as a junior. The Jets had the first pick. Interesting to think how things would have turned out.
In his final year, he had his best season yet with 3,819 yards and 36 touchdowns. Yet somehow, he didn't win the Heisman, finishing second to Michigan's Charles Woodson. To this day, it's one of the most debated snubs in college football history. But what made Peyton different was his mind. He was a film junkie, treating game tape like a PhD thesis. He ran meetings like a coach. His preparation became the gold standard, memorizing coverages, mastering snap counts, and decoding every defensive scheme imaginable. So when the 1998 draft rolled around, the Indianapolis Colts didn't hesitate. With the number 1 overall pick, they selected Peyton Manning.
The Indianapolis Colts select quarterback, University of Tennessee, Peyton Manning.
And even though Cooper never made it to the league, Peyton chose to wear the number 18 to honor him.
My jersey number wore the number he wore, which was 18. So I still want to wear 18 today because I still feel like I'm playing my football for my brother who doesn't have a chance to play anymore.
However, his rookie year was brutal. The Colts finished 3-13, and Peyton Manning threw a rookie record 28 interceptions, a record that still stands to this day. But beneath those growing pains, something bigger was forming. Peyton was learning, evolving, absorbing every mistake like data. And in year 2, he flipped the Colts record from 3-13 to 13-3. By year 5, he was orchestrating one of the most ruthlessly efficient offenses the league had ever seen, throwing to superstar wide receivers Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. And the stats followed. In 2004, he threw an NFL record at the time, 49 touchdowns, with a 121.1 passer rating. 2 years later, he finally slayed the postseason demons and won Super Bowl 41, bringing the Colts their first title since the team played in Baltimore. Then, in 2013, in Denver, at the age of 37, he shattered records again, putting up 5,477 passing yards and 55 touchdowns, both records that still stand. Over 18 seasons, he racked up 5 NFL MVPs, which is still the most ever, 14 Pro Bowls, 7 All-Pro selections, 2 Super Bowl titles, and over 71,000 yards, 539 touchdowns, and a legacy built on preparation, precision, and obsession. But there was always one name that haunted him: Tom Brady. Where Peyton was the perfectionist, Brady was the conqueror. Again and again, when the playoffs rolled around, it was New England standing in the way. 2003, 2004, 2006, 2013, and 2014. Brady was Peyton's kryptonite. But in the background, a new Manning was emerging, one that was ready to slay the giant. And his story starts at the same place where all Manning legends are born, Isidore Newman High School in New Orleans. By the time Eli Manning arrived in high school, the family legacy was already enormous. Archie was a New Orleans icon. Peyton had just shattered records at Tennessee and was on his way to becoming the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And now it was Eli's turn. He threw for over 7,000 yards and 80 touchdowns at Newman, quietly rewriting the school record books and leading a pass-heavy offense with total composure. He was clutch in the biggest moments and never flinched under pressure, a trait that would later define his NFL career. Eli wasn't like Peyton, though. Where Peyton needed control, Eli thrived in unpredictability. He didn't seek attention, but you always noticed him when the game was on the line. And recruiters noticed too. Despite his last name, Eli didn't ride a wave of family hype to the SEC. He earned his way there. Schools like LSU and Texas came calling, but ultimately, fate pulled him toward Ole Miss, the same place where his dad had become a legend. The Rebels had long been an SEC afterthought, but with Eli under center, they had a true star. He took down ranked opponents. He led fourth-quarter comebacks, and he showed week after week that he wasn't just Peyton's little brother. By his senior season in 2003, Eli was nearly unstoppable. He threw for over 3,600 yards and 29 touchdowns, earned SEC Player of the Year honors, and finished third in the Heisman voting, behind Jason White and Larry Fitzgerald. He left Oxford as the school's all-time leader in passing yards, completions, and touchdowns. So, by the spring of 2004, Eli Manning was the surefire #1 pick in the NFL draft. But there was a problem. The San Diego Chargers held the first overall pick, and they were a mess. The Chargers had burned through quarterbacks like crazy, drafting Ryan Leaf in 1998, then Drew Brees in 2001, and neither worked out. The team was dysfunctional, and to Archie, it reminded him a lot of when he played for the Saints. So, to get a clearer picture, Archie made a phone call to Ryan Leaf's father and asked him one simple question. When things got hard, did they support your son? The answer? No, they didn't. And that call confirmed everything Archie feared. So the Mannings made a decision. Eli was not going to play ball in San Diego. So on April 24, 2004, draft day, the Chargers, fully aware of Eli's stance, called his bluff and picked him anyway. But it wasn't over. The Giants, holding the #4 pick, were waiting in the wings. They loved Eli, but they didn't believe they had a real shot at him. Just the night before, they even told Ben Roethlisberger, another top QB prospect, that he'd likely be their guy. Then, with just minutes left on the Giants' pick clock, San Diego called. In a flurry of negotiations that unfolded after the picks were made, a deal was struck. Eli Manning to New York for Phillip Rivers, a 2005 first-round pick, a 2004 third-rounder, and a 2005 fifth-round pick. Eli was still in the middle of his media obligations, doing interviews in Chargers blue, when a kid bursts through the door yelling, "You've been traded to New York." The backlash was intense. Critics accused Eli of being entitled. Others defended the move as a rare case of a player taking control of his future. And for a quarterback often described as quiet and laid back, Eli Manning had just made the loudest move of his career before ever stepping onto an NFL field. The question was, would it pay off? After taking over the starting job midway through his rookie year, Eli became the leader of a franchise desperate for relevance again. He wasn't flashy, he threw too many picks, and his body language never screamed alpha. But when it mattered, he delivered. In 2007, the Giants snuck into the playoffs as a wild card. Then, behind a ferocious defensive front led by Michael Strahan, Ozzie Umenyiora, and a suddenly fearless Eli, they knocked off the Buccaneers, stunned Tony Romo's #1 seeded Cowboys, and outdueled Brett Favre in icy Lambeau. However, waiting for them in the Super Bowl was the 18-0 New England Patriots, led by Randy Moss, Wes Welker, and Eli's older brother's worst nightmare, Tom Brady. These Pats were the greatest offense in the history of the league. Brady won MVP. Randy Moss broke records. So this game was expected to be a beating.
Being called the underdog team is nothing new for the Giants. They started the season 0-2. Look how far they've made it.
In fact, the Patriots were 12.5-point favorites. But Eli didn't get the memo. Down with 1:15 left in Super Bowl 42, Eli spun out of a sure sack and heaved a prayer to David Tyree, who somehow pinned the ball to his helmet. A few plays later, Manning hit Plaxico Burress in the end zone for the game winner. The perfect Patriots were no more, and Eli had slayed the man his brother couldn't. But 4 years later, in 2011, the Giants were back in the Super Bowl, once again against the Patriots, led by a hungry for revenge Tom Brady. This time, with under 4 minutes to go, Eli dropped a perfect rainbow ball to Mario Manningham down the sideline, one of the greatest throws in Super Bowl history, which led to another heartbreak for Brady and Belichick. So Eli didn't just beat the greatest quarterback of all time once, he beat him twice, with the whole world watching. Eli retired with over 57,000 passing yards, 366 touchdowns, and two of the most iconic playoff runs in NFL history. And even though he never won an MVP or led the league in passing, he had something even rarer: the ability to rise when everyone else folded. He thrived when the lights shined the brightest. And while Eli's calmness under pressure became his legacy, a new Manning is just beginning to write his own. Meet Archie Manning, the next in the bloodline, and maybe the most hyped of them all. Despite being the son of Cooper Manning, who played receiver, Arch wanted to be a quarterback, like his grandpa and his uncles. At Isidore Newman High School, the same New Orleans prep powerhouse where all three Manning brothers played, Arch broke nearly every record, including the career marks once held by his uncle Eli. By the time he left high school, he was a 5-star recruit and the #1 prospect in the entire nation, regardless of position. Now he's set to lead the Texas Longhorns, and despite barely playing in his first 2 years, many project Arch to be the #1 overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. But no matter what happens next with Arch or the future Mannings, one thing is certain: the story of this family will echo through football history forever. To the world, Peyton and Eli are Super Bowl champions. To each other, though, they're just brothers. Despite the fame, the rivalries, and the legacy they carry, the Manning brothers have always stayed grounded. Even after retirement, that bond is still front and center, whether they're breaking down film on the Manning cast, roasting each other in commercials, or going viral for who knows what. Archie, Cooper, Peyton, Eli, and now Arch, the Mannings, football's first royal family. If you enjoyed this video, stick with Blitz, subscribe, and check out some of our other content right here.